Very often, the advice that you get online is not helpful if you want to learn jazz. A problem I see again and again, especially with students learning jazz online, is that you waste time practicing a lot of things that are not helping you. And of course, when you don't see any results, it's difficult to stay motivated. Now, I answer comments and emails about this all the time, and I've taught hundreds of jazz students. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to approach the process in a better way and make your practice more efficient. I'll also tell you about how I did a lot of things wrong and how some of the things that you're always told to practice are not what you should spend time on at all. Setting the right goals for your practice is almost impossible if you don't know what that goal really is. It's like trying to travel to a place without knowing which direction you need to go. You have to be very lucky to get there at all. Now, this conversation is one that I've had hundreds of times, and I see it in comments and emails every week. I want to learn to play jazz solos, so I want to first learn all the scales and all the arpeggios in all the positions. I don't think that ever worked for anyone, but I'll show you what does. I always tell students to start simple. Take an easy song and learn one position and only the scales and arpeggios that you'll need for the song, so that you can also put what you learn to use. Now, very often I get this response: don't worry, I can practice all the exercises and I really have the discipline to learn this. Doesn't have to be fun. I can handle all the exercises and all the hard work. That is probably true, but it's also kind of missing the point, because one reason, but not the most important one, that you should apply what you practice to music is to have fun and feel that you're getting somewhere and stay motivated. Making music is the final goal after all, but what you don't realize is that there's another side to this as well. Now, I'm sure you can see that even if you learn all the scales and arpeggios all over the neck in all keys, then that's not enough. You take a song and try to play it, but what you end up playing is only scales and arpeggios like you practiced, and you sound like this. Here, something is clearly missing. So another important reason that I tell you to apply things to songs and play music is that there are a lot of other important skills involved that you never learn if you only play exercises. Think about timing, phrasing, and keeping the form. These skills are more difficult than scales and arpeggios, so you should take time to develop those as well, and saving them for later is not going to work. Remember that jazz is a language. You don't learn a language by memorizing a dictionary. Keep in mind that I'm not saying that you should never practice scales or exercises. They're good for a lot of things, but they are very far from all you need, and you need to work on the right things. I'll get back to suggesting which exercises to work on later in the video. That is why it's a much better approach to focus on one song, one position, and learning how to play music with that material, which gives you a foundation to build on and expand from when you're learning more songs and more positions. And that is also how I structured my course, the Jazz Guitar Roadmap, and I see people learning to play jazz every day when they post videos and get feedback in the course community. An important part of learning the other skills that you need, like phrasing and timing, is often also not really taught in any kind of useful way, but I'll get back to that later in the video. First, let's talk about chords, because you have a similar problem with learning chords. It's not just scales and arpeggios. So before we start playing songs, I'm first just going to learn all the drop 2 and drop 3 inversions of all the chords in all the keys. Similar to soloing, then learning to comp is about a lot more than knowing a ton of chord inversions. And it's much more important to learn to hear how these chords work in the songs, how to play solid rhythms, and how to add the right colors to these chords. But of course, you only learn that if you actually use them, if you play songs. Another thing you want to be aware of is that not all inversions are equal, and many of them are actually rarely used. And that's why you'll get a lot more out of learning simple chords that are very common and focus on sounding good with those, just like pretty much everyone you listen to. Because if you check, they don't use that many inversions. Like that, you can hear the harmony, and you also want to learn the melody and use that to learn more about what you can do with the chords and what works where. Stuff like this you learn by playing and listening, not as some sort of theory, rule, or equation. Practicing like this, you're developing all the skills you need, not just a bunch of chord voicings. Let's talk about how you do learn phrasing and rhythm, because for both soloing and comping, that is really what makes jazz sound like jazz. This might come across as controversial, but if you want to learn jazz, you need to listen to jazz. I imagine that you can see how Just playing and improvising won't magically make you sound like jazz. Joe DiOrio, the famous guitar player, once said in a masterclass, 50% of your practice time should be spent listening to music. And I kind of think he has a point. The more jazz you listen to, the easier it is to learn to play like that. Plus that once you start playing, you will sound a lot more natural. Again, the comparison with language fits. I've learned more from listening and watching TV than any lesson when it comes to learning languages. In fact, I've learned Dutch without having a single lesson. At least I've sort of learned Dutch. Now, luckily, listening to jazz has become very easy with YouTube and Spotify. So start checking out all the great music, ask for recommendations, and pass on what you like and don't like. I love hanging out with my friends, checking out albums and talking about the music and the musicians. And you want to know all the important and amazing albums that shaped jazz, like Kinda Blue, Saxophone Colossus, Speak No Evil, You Must Believe in Spring, and so on. There are thousands of great albums, it's great music, and you will benefit from it on many levels. Learning solos by ear is also important, but again, there's not a lot of useful advice on this. This is something where I really wish my teachers had helped me build better habits and given me more guidance while I was studying. Learning solos by ear is a great way to develop a lot of phrasing, technique and timing, but you have to start with stuff that's easy enough. Before I started studying, I learned a lot from learning solos by ear, but for the first few years of my study, it was not something that was encouraged that much, and the focus was on other things, which I kind of think was a pity. There are a few things that you want to get right when you make this a part of your practice. The first ones are about the process, but I also have some inexpensive gear advice. The place where you want to start is a really simple short list. Find easy solos, start with short solos, and listen to them 50 to 100 times before you try to play anything. So don't start with Charlie Parker on Cherokee, or Alan Holdsworth on anything. There is a reason why so many people start with Grant Green, Kenny Burrell, Miles Davis and Chet Baker, and they all play amazing stuff that you can learn a lot from. I have a video that gives you a few suggestions. I'll put a link to that in the video description. But gear is also a factor. In hindsight, I realized that when I moved to The Hague from Copenhagen, then I should not only have brought a boombox with a crappy CD player and horrible speakers. Two things that are not super expensive that will make learning by ear 100 times easier are having a decent set of headphones and also having software that helps you start and stop at a specific phrase again and again. I didn't have a computer when I was studying because it was a long time ago, but after 4 years when I got a better CD player, I immediately started to check out so much more stuff by ear, just because I could go back a phrase without having to start the song from the beginning. And this was obviously a million years ago, but today you can either use a free DAW like Audacity or an inexpensive program like Transcribe, which is what I use. And that is truly amazing for this. And it has many more features that I pretty much never use. And I use that program almost every day. When it comes to technical exercises, there are more things to consider than just doing too much of them. Some exercises, both for chords and soloing, will be more useful for learning jazz than others. And it's important to start with the right exercises if you want to be efficient. Check out this video where I talk about finding the exercises that develop the right skills for learning jazz, the order that you do them in, and also how you get that into music so that it isn't only exercises. It makes it a lot easier. Check it out. Learn jazz, make music.